Okay, good afternoon on your side of the world. Good evening on my side of the world. Welcome to ARTIVISM, the power of art for social transformation. Today we have with us Zoë Lintzeris. Zoë was born and raised in Baltimore. She is a visual artist working in painting and photography. She founded on her previous work in journalism. Her artwork explores the human condition and the emotional psyche through a minimalist lens. Her pieces reside in private collections throughout North America and Europe and have been exhibited in installations at galleries and creative spaces, including 222 Bowery, Clover's Fine Art Gallery, Greenpoint Gallery, Maryland Art Place, and Point Green Studios. From 2017 to 2019, in New York City, she held 3 solo shows highlighting her conceptual documentary photo work and marked her first solo show in Baltimore in 2022. Since 2018, Zoë teaches arts in health practices in personal sessions and workshops and regularly speaks on the intersection of the arts and well-being. She holds a graduate certificate in arts and health and works with the International Arts and Mind Lab, Center for Applied Neuroaesthetics at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, which I love, right? That's how we connected. She is developing the world's first arts and health residency and retreat space in Greece and looks forward to helping artists and creatives from all over the world. Welcome, Zoë.
Thank you, RG. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Sometimes with technology, I never know. I also really want to thank Adelphi University. I want to thank the Gottesman Libraries, the Teachers College at Columbia University, as well as Sing for Hope. Incredible spaces, and thank you for giving me space to share what I created, which was art to the people. I'm happy to talk about it today with this group of folks in the spirit of community. So I'm just going to begin to share my screen. I hope we can all see this. Are we good? Yes, I hope so. Okay.
Not yet.
So, yeah, in essence.
There we go.
Okay, good. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, that's great. So in essence, thanks for the wonderful introduction. Before we begin though, what I always like to do before I lead Art to the People workshops is do a quick check-in. So I would love to see everyone who's tuned into this call, if you could just put in the chat, since you all are muted at the moment, where you're coming in from, so where you're tuning in from, I should say, and if you could use one word to describe how you're feeling in this moment, what word would that be? You can just pop that in the chat, because again, if we're talking about community, I just really want to see where people are tuning in from and what you're feeling and what your current experience is like. Let's see here. Okay, RG, I love that you're in Athens. That's great. I'm grateful. I'm also really happy to see these words. I have to tell you, a lot of people tune in, they're like frustrated, exhausted. Oh, hi, Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. Feeling warmth from outside and making space for it within. That's lovely. New York, also New York. Hi. I used to live in New York, so it's nice to see you. Hi, Quentin from Baltimore. Excited. Wow. Really happy to hear these responses. Usually I hear exhausted, frustrated. It's Monday, so this is great. Fantastic, everyone. Okay, thank you for sharing that. So just a little bit more about me. As RG graciously described, I'm an artist specializing in paint and photography. I also have the privilege to work with a bunch of creative organizations in New York City, as well as in Baltimore City and now beyond. This includes the Metropolitan Museum of Art, LifeBridge Health, the League for People with Disabilities, where I work with folks contending with everything from multiple sclerosis, children contending with terminal cancers. I also work with organizations that house folks that deal with autism, as well as bipolar disorder, PTSD. I've also worked with folks with substance abuse issues and sex workers in Baltimore City. So these populations run the gamut in terms of who is really utilizing the arts and health services that I'm providing at the moment. And I just feel privileged to work with each and every one of these people, as well as these organizations. And as it was stated, I also work with the International Arts and Mind Lab, the Center for Applied Neuroaesthetics, at Johns Hopkins. And if you have not really learned or heard about neuroaesthetics, I highly encourage that you check this field out. It is a burgeoning field for the last 2 decades. And effectively, neuroaesthetics is a field showcasing how the arts and aesthetic experiences measurably change the brain, body, and behavior in humans, overwhelmingly in a positive way. So Google neuroaesthetics when you can. It's a really interesting field. And if you're an artist or anyone in the arts, it's a great field to get to know because it will be shaping our collective future going forward. And as we get to that point, I really want to share one of my favorite quotes by the esteemed Carrie Mae Weems, who's an incredible photographer, African-American photographer, I should say, capturing the African-American experience. And she was definitely an inspiration for a lot of my Black and white documentary photography. And the quote is, "Art has saved my life on a regular basis." And I pose the question to everyone again. If you really think about the quote, there is some gravity to it, right? You know, art has saved my life on a regular basis. Well, how so? You know, if you were going through a really dire moment in life, maybe you put on that song that happened to just, you know, hold you and like cover you and just make you feel good in that moment when you were going through a rough time. Or you referenced your favorite book, or you happened to catch a play that just moved you and just made you feel not just alive, but a sense of aliveness within you again, right? And that essence of being human is so powerful because art really has saved us over time, right? It hasn't just helped us survive as humans, but thrive. It's the only reason we've continued as a species. So within this quote, I kind of ask you, you know, what has helped you within the artistic context, like save your experiences and save your life, right? And I pose this and piggyback that off of COVID-19, okay? It's really hard to talk about anything within the arts or anything at all without referencing the last 3 years, right? So I want to talk about how COVID changed my experience and how that sort of brought about art to the people. And in essence, art saved my life during COVID because I had what I called the OG COVID. I was bedridden, I was very sick. I lost all my work as an artist. I had just started working at a nightclub. I was a teaching artist. I was going to curate my first show in New York called Unconscious Bias. I had all the artists lined up, all work, and that all just fell flat. So I was emotionally, physically, and financially wrecked, just to be very honest. And I had to really turn my life around quite quickly and say, what can I do? How can I just not help myself, but how can I help others? Because clearly I'm not the only one experiencing this. So I decided to gather all my former clients as a teaching artist and say, hi, I would like to teach your son, your daughter, or you again online. How would you feel about that? And surprisingly, I got a lot of yeses. I'd never taught art online in my life. I had no idea what to expect. A lot of clients I had were neurodivergent, dealing with high functioning autism. I continue to work with a client today who has fine motor skills issues. And I said, how in the world am I going to, you know, be able to facilitate this appropriately just on a screen without seeing, you know, how they're holding the materials, working with the materials, and being able to guide them just verbally, right? So that being said, I wrote this post and talked about how this happened, but also noting that I believe the secure jobs of the future are ones that will embrace creativity and empathy while cultivating community. We live in such an individualistic society now. It kind of pains me to say that, but the secure jobs are going to rely on those really human tendencies of creativity, which AI is sort of bankrolling on slowly but surely. I'm trying to prevent that. And also empathy being a really big thing, right? But that means we have to coalesce community. We have to bring ourselves together to make this happen. So as we slowly, increasingly veer toward AI employment, it is crucial we remember what makes us human in the first place and how the arts take us there together. Again, the famous phrase, it takes a village, you know, as an artist, I can make art individually, you know, the state of flow, 2 minutes can turn into 2 hours and, you know, time goes on. But when you're in a community space, you know, you have to really recognize, okay, how do we create something together, maybe in a finite amount of time, and not just build something, but develop something and sustain it. Like that's the really big thing. So COVID really put sort of the fire under me to kind of really change the framework of what it's like to make, you know, art in a very healthful way, to be able to express yourself creatively, particularly when you're in dire straits. So just some facts here. I have to invoke Johns Hopkins with the NeuroArts Blueprint, which is an initiative that comes from the Aspen Institute and Johns Hopkins University, again, looking at how the arts and aesthetics measurably change the brain, body, and behavior of humans. And they surveyed a bunch of people, from clinicians to neuroscientists to artists and practitioners, and said virtually everyone surveyed agrees that experiencing art is fundamental to being human, go figure, and that science provides evidence that art changes the brain and body, right? So now we have science really, really backing this up, you know, because with science, that's sort of the catalyst for making sure art matters. For some reason, we need the data now to back this up, but the NeuroArts Blueprint and many other things are providing that now. So if that is the case for sending the arts forward and making sure that the arts are found in every sector of society, then personally, I'm all for it. And also possibly even more vital, and check out the year on this, everyone, because this is really important. This is coming from 2019, right? So right before the pandemic, we have the WHO stating social interaction while participating in the arts can reduce loneliness and lack of social support, which are both linked with adverse physiological responses, et cetera, right? So I embolden that reduce word because that's really key. Again, this is pre-pandemic. And loneliness, as many leading psychologists and psychiatrists are citing, it is the silent epidemic in, I would say, post-capitalist societies. So we have Japan, Germany, United Kingdom, United States. It is epidemic among young people, and particularly among young men. So it is crucial, absolutely crucial, that we not just have an individual aspect of the arts in our lives, which is important, but a communal aspect of the arts, so we can actually sort of tackle this silent crisis, this silent epidemic of loneliness. And of course, young people being the future, we want to make sure they have avenues and opportunities to healthfully express themselves, and the arts can take them there, right? So how do we begin? So Art to the People, this is why I'll join this talk, is something I created in coming back to Baltimore City. I'd lived away for almost 20 years. And in coming back to the city that effectively raised me on arts and culture, I really wanted to get to know the city again. A lot of spaces I had closed, but a lot of them were still open. And there were some new spaces too, which was really cool. But again, I had to get to know the community and communities to make this happen. First and foremost, I can say you have to meet people where they are, not where you think they've been and not where you think they should go. This is really crucial. How many times throughout history have people assumed they know better than the current system and group that was in place? It doesn't really work out, you know, to put it mildly. So if you're coming in as the guest or as the newbie, you better make sure you understand where everyone has been and what they're looking to do for their community. So I really wanted to hear them out on that and see what was going on in these communities. So I launched Art to the People in 2021. When I got back to Baltimore, the Alchemy of Art is an art space in downtown, in the downtown part of the city. So I did a summer series there, which focused on drawing, painting, and meditation. So it lasted for several weeks, and I put out this invitation on Eventbrite and Reddit, and a bunch of people showed up. I didn't know any of them. Some came regularly, some came once or twice, but it was really cool to see who showed up, with what frame of mind, where they were coming from, whether it was like a Hopkins student, whether it was somebody who just got off like second shift, you know, all sorts of people. I had a bartender come one time before his shift, which was great. You know, again, bringing all sorts of people from the community around to come together and have discussion and collaboration and just express themselves, right? The other big thing, which I hate to admit, but also it's very important, size does matter with these things. So in teaching these workshops, I realized the larger it is, the less effective it is. In these intimate gatherings, especially if we're voicing emotions, people want to be seen and heard and feel safe first and foremost and respected. So if you're creating a non-judgmental, respectful, and safe space, that is crucial to ensuring the dynamic is vibrant, but also calm, right? So I learned that about 8 to 12 people max in a workshop is really perfect for the type of work we're going to be doing, which includes meditation, which includes art making, as well as discussion, basically talking about how this made them feel, what they're feeling in the moment now, and what was going through their mind while they were making the art, possibly even while meditating, what we call like an internal distraction, so to speak. And as I did at the beginning of this presentation with the checking in is not just for baggage. Whenever I do these workshops, again, meet people where they're at, not where you think they're coming from, never assume. Always ask, right? So in essence, how are you feeling today? There's one word to describe how you're feeling upon entering this room or in this moment. Do you mind sharing? And just seeing what people say, especially after a work day. I mean, it runs the gamut. And that's why I was really excited to see everyone's responses here, because they were actually very calm and sweet. And finally, you want to create a trio of experiences. We live in a very distracted world where algorithms are telling us what to do and view at all times. So in order to kind of keep interest in the workshop proceedings, I like to break it up a bit. It's, as I mentioned before, it's one thing if you're, 2 minutes into an art project on an individual level, like as a painter, 2 minutes can turn into 2 hours, right? And then you're in the state of flow. This is a little bit different, where you want to make sure everyone has the capability to focus on the meditation aspect as well as the art making aspect, while leaving room for discussion. Discussion probably being the biggest thing almost. So let's set the scene. How we start again is with the check-in, and then I encourage everyone to get into a meditative stance within the space, okay? So what does that look like? I ask people to sort of get to really feel out their body, ground both sit bones. You can place hands on your shoulders just to release the pressure a little bit. You can bring your chin down just a little, like so. And if it's available to you, you can lower your gaze, or if you're more comfortable, you can close your eyes. Most people close their eyes, but again, I like to give some options because, again, some people that might not feel safe for them. So if they just choose to lower the eyes, that's totally fine. I don't involve music. I basically am just creating a meditation sequence for people. So just having them feel out their breath. There's purpose and pause. I didn't pause. I did pause intentionally, actually, just to see what happened there. Like, are you listening to your breath? What does your breath sound like in this moment? And what are the surrounding sounds in the room as you're listening to your breath? Because those surrounding sounds will pass. Like, I live in a city, Baltimore City can be a lively city. There's sirens, there's horns, there's people yelling, there's this, there's that. So effectively, this is a kind of classic example of meditation. How do you learn to sort of tune that out? Because you're never going to be in a fully silent space. So you kind of just have to learn to let things pass, which is practice. And then I also do a guided visualization component. So let's say if you are more visually inclined like myself, I ask participants sometimes. In my last workshop, this was a particular case. Imagine inhaling a cool ball of light, see it into your body. Again, let it spread throughout your body. And as you exhale, it becomes warm, send it out through your mouth, right? So again, you're kind of seeing that go through your body, in, out, in and out, right? And if that doesn't do anything for you, you still have the verbal cues. So again, you're hearing, to inhale and to exhale. So again, depending what your mental framework is, the visual guided visualization can help, or just the verbal cues help. And that's internal awareness. And then we go to external awareness, which is the art making experience. And this is kind of where we get down and dirty, right? Like, this is why we're all here to talk about, right? And so I've created like a massive series of prompts, like a lot of curricula for this program and other things I've done. And this is a photo actually of one of my regulars, Devin, who was a sweetheart. And essentially I asked the group to, we were going to get really into touch. So I asked the group to just take a pastel and trace around their hand, which is kind of a, I would say sensuous experience, because there's touch, and this is a very delicate area of the body, like this area here within the fingers. And then do it on the opposite side, using, your non-dominant hand. So you're really stimulating a lot of things here, and you're having to focus on something you're not used to doing. And let's face it, none of us are doing this all day, every day. We were designed to work with our hands, but instead we're just using our thumbs, typing all the time, not really using these materials. Hence why our fine motor skills are kind of very slowly becoming weak. There was a great article saying very quickly about how people training to be surgeons do not have the dexterity as they used to needle a thread. Fascinating. That's a whole other story. But again, this is why I'm creating this experience, so we can really get in touch with that sort of primal sense of self and reconnect to our instincts. So then I asked them to kind of follow a pattern of just tracing around the lines of the hands until it gets smaller and smaller, while also choosing colors that reflect what they're feeling. So if they're feeling like, I don't know, maybe a little rage, hopefully not after the meditation, but you never know, a little energy, a little Aries warmth or whatever, or cool energy, so green, blue, purple, they can work with that there, put that into their piece. I just leave it up to them, but I always say, listen to your instincts. What colors are calling out to you? So they're using pastel, they're using watercolor, and then that's the external awareness component. And then we get into a little bit discussion. What was this like for you? How did this make you feel? And then everyone turns their artwork so they don't see their own, they see everyone else's. So that way they're not looking at their artwork and saying, oh, mine looks so bad, because that gets heard a lot, especially if people feel they're not art inclined, which I always disagree with. And everyone can see that even though they have the same prompt, everyone's looks different, and that's totally okay. That's the whole point, right? You hear something and then you made something completely within that framework, and it's your own. And it's not right or wrong. It's just yours, and it's your art piece. And that's the key. And if there's time, we do a lot of easy movement exercises. So again, kind of stretching out the wrists like so, and then I make them clean their hands. And sometimes we do a lot of facial exercises. So like temple movement here, laugh line movement here, because let's face it, we were wearing masks for 3 years. Things got a little tight. We weren't doing too much behind the masks. We were kind of stuck. So again, just trying to get us to really reconnect with our brain, body, and behavior. So that's, again, the trio of experiences within Art to the People. And this is a quote actually from Devin. I had asked a bunch of people to submit testimonials after the workshop. So it was really great to see and hear what he said. And he wrote, having a period to stop and sit and calm down, doing a joyful childhood activity before moving again was beneficial to me. You inspired me to get home art supplies to use when I feel the inspiration, as well as for my nephew. Watercolor is awesome. I also agree. Again, this is somebody who just came out of a whim. I did not know who this person was and showed up every week and just made all the things. We had a different theme every week and was inspired and got something for himself as well as for his nephew. So that in itself is the essence of community, right? It wasn't just about me. It wasn't just about him. It was like this effect of, well, this impacted you, and now this is going to impact your nephew, and that might impact somebody else, right? And that's the effect. That's what we're trying to build here. Again, coalescing that community in the name of arts, but also make sure we are healthfully expressing our emotions through art. That's kind of what it's about. So again, how does this look? So this is just some photos of some of the setups I've done. Again, this is for one of the larger workshops on the left. Of course, I'm at the mercy of what the space can provide. So if ideally I might have ottomans or plush chairs or low-level tables, some candles, like maybe a really good sound system, all sorts of things. But, this is at the spaces I'm at, so it's totally fine. I do my best to make it as comfortable as possible. Also, a lot of these spaces are at arts and cultural institutions, at health institutions and healthcare facilities. Alcohol is not present, obviously, but at some of these other institutions it is. And I actually mandate that alcohol is not offered because I feel it just kind of detracts from the whole community building experience. You know, it might help us feel a little more comfortable and loose, but I also can't tell you how many times people have sipped from their paint cups and it leads to a lot of problems. So we don't want to do that. But yeah, you can see everyone has their own space. I usually bring the materials. Sometimes the space brings materials too. And yeah, this is kind of just a general framework of how it looks. So again, everyone's spaced out. Everyone has their own way of just being in the moment. Okay, and finally, I just want to say, as I said before, art is what makes us human. We are the only species that can actively have creativity and empathy and create communities of being and purpose and excitement and vitality through the arts, visual arts, performing arts, literary arts, narrative arts. You know, it goes back to 40, 50,000 years ago, sitting around the campfire, sharing a story, performing, and then having that continue across cultures, across classes, across people from all over the world. It's our one probably unifying aspect, you know? It's why they were making mandalas in Asia as well as in South America, kind of around the same time, even though those spaces had no contact with each other, right? It's the true beauty of being human. So in essence, I think art to the people is a very, very, very minor symbol and or opportunity of creating space so that it's affordable, equitable, accessible for communities, which we have to get to know first and foremost, and making sure people aren't just surviving during these times, but thriving through art making. And that's art to the people, I have to say.
Oh, thank you, Zoe. Before we get to, questions and conversation and, comments, I would like to remind everyone that next Monday, March 27th, Dr. Melissa Liam Fernandez will present My Choice to Return to High School, Planting the Seeds of Personal Power and Creative Equity in a Small Town. Just a little bit. Melissa Liam Fernandez was a high school teacher. At the same time, she was pursuing her doctorate. When she received her doctorate, rather than go into higher ed, she decided to stay where she is in high school, believing, and rightfully so, that she will have more of an impact, right, on those that need this most. So for more information on the series, ARTIVISM, The Power of Art for Social Transformation, to see past events, to see some upcoming events, please go to the website. You could just Google ARTIVISM Adelphi and we will come up. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at ARTIVISM4 Shared Humanity. Our YouTube channel is ARTIVISM for Shared Humanity. As a reminder, the ARTIVISM Wearable Art Fashion Show and Roundtable Expo is coming up this April of 2023, to be followed by a multi-venue exhibition. Also, if you would like to get more involved in this ongoing initiative, please contact the ARTIVISM at artivism@adelphi.edu. Now we can have a discussion. Any questions, any comments? Let's see. I think there are some in the chat, Zoe.
I'm also going to stop the share.
Comments, yes.
Let me see.
I just want to say thank you so much, Zoe. This was fascinating.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it.
Yeah. My question is like how you start, how begin, because I know I work with like community-based organizations. I'm a former artist. I'm not doing any art at all. So I see the point of how valuable art is, because I missed that in my life. And I'm now going back, taking courses in digital photography, so to connect with art again. Is something out there? That's my question.
A lot of cold calls, but truly just really putting the idea out there and seeing who bites. I mean, when I moved truth be told, when I moved back to Baltimore, I had a couple, I still had some old friends. The running joke is your high school friends are always here. It's kind of a local thing. But I really knew relatively no one in the arts space because I was coming back here as a working professional and I hadn't really lived here since I was 18. So I asked my friends, my high school friends, I said, okay, who should I meet? Who should I know to connect to? And a mutual friend connected me to the person who owned the Alchemy of Art. And we just got to talking and we became cordial with each other and then friendly and actually became, I think, good friends. And she said, look, I have this space. I mean, there might be a show up because it is a gallery. It's like a boutique gallery space. But you're welcome to, host this event in the afternoons on a Tuesday, where it wouldn't be so busy like on a weekend when people would come to see the exhibitions. And I said, my gosh, that sounds great. That's fantastic. I offered to like split the proceeds with her. That was the other thing I forgot to mention. I did not turn a profit the first year at all. And that wasn't the intention. I just wanted to see something like this would resonate with the community and would work. I mean, it was all out of my own pocket, which was fine. But in essence, I was like, how is this going to continue? If I build this, if I start this, how is this going to work? And again, I happened to meet somebody that had space. They offered it to me. I felt very lucky. And just, I kept going there once a week, setting up, cleaning up, etc. And then I started pitching it to other organizations within Baltimore, and Creative Alliance, which is a really great arts and cultural organization in the city, said, hey, that sounds great. But again, it took a lot of preparation and time. It wasn't like, yes, come by next week and have an event. They said, okay, maybe in 6 months we can do something. So, it was a lot of just waiting effectively. I would say even my work with Hopkins, I had reached out to them to ask to work with them. And a year later, that opportunity came to be, but it took about a year, and in a different work capacity. So again, I think timing is everything. And I just happened to, put it out there that this is what I was looking to do. This is what I was hoping to build on, not just by myself, but with others, and see if it resonated with the community. So that's how it happened.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh,
yes.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
You have a question from Quentin. What goes into the creation of your curriculums?
Oh, I would also say a lot of trial and error as well. Again, a lot of stuff is customized for the population I'm looking to teach, right? So if I'm looking to teach folks from the inner city, if I'm looking to teach, privately in New York City, everything's going to be very different in essence because we're coming at it from a very different lens. So I'm looking to create projects that might tap into the interests of those communities. So once you meet once, you can kind of gauge, and then once you continue, you can kind of adapt to the needs of that community. So whether they're interested in, certain arts practices or, certain historical practices, of maybe what influenced them growing up, something they had in their house, something their friends are doing, and seeing how to incorporate that into the curriculum, always adjusting, right? So with the Art to the People curriculum specifically, in particular, I had a couple of ideas from past workshops I had done, but in order to make them more meditative and like focused and calm inducing, I had to change them up a little bit. So in particular, the hand project, I remember just doing that with kids at this neurodivergent workshop I did in New York a couple years ago. But then when I wanted to do it like for working professional adults in Baltimore, I said, okay, what can I tack on to maybe take this to the next level for their experience so that it can last longer, so to speak. So it's not a 15-minute project, but a 40-minute project. So materials, different intricacy as well. And again, tailoring it specifically for the community I was working with. Another one that I use frequently is mandala making, which again, for kids can look very differently. And for adults sometimes they can spend an hour and 15 minutes on that. Because I've done a couple Art to the People workshops that were 90 minutes and people just get lost. I mean, they just start from the dot and the patterns start going out and the symmetry and the mirroring. And before they know it, they're like, oh my God, I made this very intricate, detailed thing. And I just started from a dot, you know? So that's really it. It's just adjustment and recognizing, first and foremost, you know, kind of gauging in the very beginning, in the first workshop, what the community is needing, what they're reacting to, hearing from them directly, something they might be interested going forward. I like to ask that question and then just taking it from there. It's not necessarily a built out curriculum. It's kind of like taking pieces of a puzzle and moving it around, and usually it works out. It's a good question.
And then we have a question from Froso and then Jim.
Let me open up the screens. Yeah, well, end of the day, I was dead, but you just woke me up. It is amazing. You just woke me up, Zoe. Well, two things. First of all, thanks a million. It's not a question, but what I'm really emotional about is that I just met you and I feel such a common ground and empathy. Because I've been teaching for 30 years, university kids, right? I'm shocked how after the pandemic, after the COVID, things came back to normal as if no one went through 2 years or more of this crippling experience. So 2 points, the sense of community and the sense of loneliness that you talked about, and the idea of communication, like the communication. I mean, I was shocked. I was teaching from Greece online because I was stuck here to London, right? I couldn't believe that you can teach architecture through such a physical thing. Of course, I was exhausted. I was teaching not 8 hours, 12 a day, because different time periods and all that. And that was possible, which was shocking. And the togetherness was very, very weird, very surreal on screen. But when you go back and meet them all, as if there is a complete lobotomy, they don't understand. So the loneliness now is even more, because they've got used to this digital, that the idea that even if you want to flirt, if you want to ask a question, if you want to talk to someone, you don't do it physically, but you do it through the bloody machine, you know, the online thing. And it is, the media has killed it all sorts of levels. So I think this idea of how can you deal with arts, and by arts, I assume you mean dance, music, painting, all of that, yeah? Is that right?
Well, yes, the arts.
Oh, no.
The arts as a whole, yes. With art to the people, it's just visual arts. I don't teach dance or anything like that. And but yeah.
I've been teaching for years outreach to little kids. The problem is, instead of focusing on what is it that you're not so personal, you're more part of a group, the team feeling none exists, because they're all trained to say, I do something, I learn, so I can get somewhere, I can get at the uni, or I can get. So this idea that you do it to become a better person and to go, as you said, beyond the sort of whatever is very rapidly losing itself. So I think this sense that, why are you doing that? Why is it good to be part of a group? Why do you feel that getting inspired? Let's take your hand project. If you look at someone's hand drawing, it might inspire you, so you can do a drawing better than him, but you copy his. So it's this idea of the actual drawing belongs to everybody, but it makes you better because it inspired you, where if you were on your own, you would get inspired, all these things. So I think, thank you so much for that. And also I loved your point of adjusting, that you could take a project like a hand or whatever else you do. It's the same in strategy and idea, but then you adapt it. So there isn't a set curriculum. And I think that's really inspirational. Anyway, I'll go on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I also, you bring up a good point, which made me think of a point I forgot to mention, which that with these workshops, and I think everything I've taught, is that it's never been about outcome. Outcome is such a very post-capitalist thing, I think, or capitalist thing, really. But outcome is like quotas, outcomes, measures. You know, it should look like this. It should be like this. If it doesn't look like this, something's wrong. You failed, and that is so incorrect, particularly in the arts. So I like to emphasize, especially with children, because around 6, 7, they say, oh, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. And I say, well, what do you mean? Let's talk about that. What could you change if you wanted to within art, right? And then when you start teaching and working with adults, it's even more measured. It's much more, it's just active in our brains. So I always emphasize, it's never about outcome with this. That's not the point. It's about process. It's about process.
The process.
It's about the journey. Yes, process, not the it's about the, the stereotypical phrase, it's about the journey, not the destination. It is with art making. I mean, as an art, if there's artists on this call, if something doesn't turn out the way you want it to look, yes, understandably so. But when it comes to an arts and health practice in general, it's really a mindfulness technique to say, I need to let that go. I'm looking at everyone else's and everyone's looks different. But again, it's not a sip and paint thing. This is coming from you. This is coming from your instincts. I just give the prompt. I give the awareness. It's up to you to start and develop your process. And then whatever the outcome is, we're going to talk about it and discuss it and share and see how it made you feel. That being the crux of everything. How did this make you feel? It's not to become the next Monet or whatever. It's about just healthfully expressing yourself through art.
And we have
you heard of Ken Rock?
I'm sorry. We have a question from M. Jim. M. Jim, you have a question?
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Hi. First, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the beautiful work that you're doing. And it was very inspirational to me to listen to you talk about, and I could just see like the passion. So I really, really appreciated that. I had a question. It's kind of like a broad question, but I was wondering what would be an advice that you would give to somebody that wanted to do the kind of work that you're doing, like to host a workshop, especially working with I guess groups like individuals with autism or development disorders. What would be an advice that you would give them if someone's interested in starting off a workshop or a project like this?
So this is for somebody who wants to start a workshop like this?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, essentially, again, I'm a former journalist by trade. So I was taught cold calling and just putting yourself out there was everything. And that's how I've sort of applied those techniques to this. I've had to deal with a lot of rejection professionally, particularly within the arts and health field, even with my certification. So recognizing and just putting together sort of a package illustrating the benefits first and foremost to the individual as well as to the collective. That's really, really important because this work not just fosters individual growth and feeling good on the whole, bettering the brain, the body behavior, but also the collective, which is really, really important because you want to create that sense of community. And you can also pitch, we're still in COVID, technically, this is what's going to rebuild our communities. I mean, we don't really have a choice at this point. So in terms of the pitch and the person who'd want to pitch something like this, it's kind of like having that who, what, where, why, and how. And I think the why is probably the most important. Why is this needed now? It's needed now because we've lost that sense of community within 3 years. We're just kind of building it back. And some of us are proceeding as if COVID never happened, which I think is horrific because we've lost a lot of arts and cultural institutions and organizations and artists even and groups to the pandemic, plus economic instability to boot. So when pitching, I would say that, we want to rebuild this aspect of community. We can do this through art. We can do this through meditation. It's a synthesis of internal and external awareness. As I was saying, the meditation, grounding yourself, making art, putting that energy out there, using, your hands, the number one tools we have, and then talking about it with people, bringing in that essence of community. So again, you're tapping into those 3 things. And again, we're in the context of COVID. So I think with that pitch, and then you just pitch to everyone or not everyone but everyone you think that may be interested, maybe a smidge interested, then you have a shot. As I said, I'm very open about this. I happened to meet somebody who knew somebody that was kind enough to offer the space. And then also I happened to, cold email a Creative Alliance, the arts organization I mentioned earlier. And then they were like, okay, maybe we can do something 6 months from now. Right. So a lot of maybes, tentatives. It took a lot of time to build, honestly. But again, I say you don't know unless you try. You don't know unless you do. So go for it.
Thank you.
I hope that helped. I don't
It
know.
really, it did. Thank you.
No problem.
I think Prosso may have had another question, or Carolina.
Why don't you ask the other people? I feel bad asking a second question or point. Do you ask someone else? Or what I wanted to ask Zoe is, through this drawing and collectiveness, have you ever tried not physical stuff that exists in front of you, but from memory and imagination? So not what's here, but what was before, like memory of different cultures or bad memories, good memories, and then in projecting the opposite, not what's happened and I remember, but what I imagine. Have you tried that as a workshop? Because that would be fascinating.
So within Art to the People, it's usually a series of themes. A lot of, like, usually we start with resistance. That's the first one because everyone's new to the workshop. So we're kind of coming into this with like, I don't know how to make art. I don't know how to meditate. I'm resisting. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm here. I'm just paying some money to be part of an experience. And then as time goes on, like the next workshop is awareness. Actually, there's 14 workshops in total, but we can talk about that another time maybe. But again, we start to bridge out into those spaces. And one workshop theme is called intuition. And that's where we kind of channel, like, you know, when you were 8 years old, what were you feeling you were supposed to do in life? Draw that out, see where that takes you. And then in this other box that you've drawn or circle or whatever I've, you know, come up with for that particular group, you know, what is your intuition telling you now that you should be doing? And again, I do sometimes like to be mindful and a bit careful about, you know, talking about trauma. So as an arts and health specialist, like I'm not a diagnostician, I am not an arts therapist. I'm not looking to treat, you know, anyone, but I also, you know, in creating the safe space and creating, you know, a non-judgmental, respectful space, those topics can come up. I don't necessarily do workshops trained on those topics. So let's say if they happen to come up within the theme, that's totally fine. But yeah, so as you were saying, yeah, sometimes, you know, intuition and instinct and all those things can come up, and nostalgia. And I think that's just a really helpful way of processing what somebody's feeling.
Also, this idea of fragments, that, you know, memories is like a bad or a good dream. You remember something really detailed and the rest is blur. So this idea of a patchwork of fragments of it, then some, and then by discussion, as you say, would be lovely that you discuss the fragments of memory, and that collectively then could inspire your community through art. That's, yeah.
And I will say this to everyone. I mean, it takes one, right? So if somebody feels the need to give voice to what they're feeling, somebody else might feel more comfortable to open up and share what they've made and share their experience. It can be challenging, you know, like, what did I just make? How do I describe this? I don't know. It just came out of me, you know, finding the words to describe the art you made, what you were feeling. And sometimes that can be very intimate and personal and vulnerable. I mean, art making is a vulnerable act, if you really think about it, especially if I'm like, hey, what are your instincts telling you? Again, we're living in a world where our instincts are supposed to be algorithmed at this point. We're being kind of told what to do. We're not tapping into that primal sense of self on the whole. So this workshop, again, and all the other art I teach, you know, gives that avenue, makes that avenue available for people to say, oh, this is, you know, this is what I'm feeling at the moment, and this is just going to kind of flow out. And then we're going to see what happens and talk about it. And again, it takes one person to be like, oh, so this is what I was feeling. And another person can chime in and say, oh, I was feeling the same way, or I had a completely different experience.
That's why I think it's amazing what you're running, I imagine, is workshops that you talk, because what is really annoying personally, because I'm an architect, I'm an artist. So this idea that I make something in silence of communication, it would be wonderful that kids or people make something really ugly, but when they talk about it or they draw something ugly, it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, and I mean,
So that,
go ahead.
yeah, that's what I think is really inspiring here, that by you making people talk about what they make, then a wonderful idea might come out of a really clumsy little drawing. So what?
And
Yeah.
that's why when people finish their project, I always have them face their project out. They're not, I mean, they've been looking at it for so long, and that way they can see everyone else's work and say, oh, wow, okay, somebody did that and that. And everyone's looks different, right? As I said, but again, it's the same prompt, the same question, the same thing that I was posing, and everyone sees that, oh, okay. And thankfully they're saying, wow, I can be creative. I can be an artist. I mean, I'm going to be that person that says we're all artists deep down. It's part of the human condition. Some people just choose to act on it professionally. Okay. But the person, head banging with the guitar in the basement is no less an artist than the person, selling out stadiums. I just, that's kind of how I feel. It's just, if you want to take it professionally or not. But these workshops and so many countless other art workshops out there that aren't necessarily arts and health related give people, again, opportunity, accessibility, and I don't want to say post-COVID world, because we're still in COVID, this is needed more than ever. We need that access. People need to be able to express themselves healthfully.
Just to share with all the team, I feel very nervous because I don't see the other people, but that's fine. It's democracy, whoever wants. I just feel a little bit nervous. But if anyone is interested, there's a guru I have very few gurus. A guy that died 2 years ago called Sir Ken Robinson. Do you know the guy? Obviously, no.
Yes. He wrote The Element.
Yeah.
The Element.
But he became my guru 10 years ago, whenever it was 15. The idea that schools, I mean, his first beginning of schools kill creativity is a Bible. I mean, the idea, it's exactly as if you're illustrating what he preached. It's amazing now. Through this suppression of creativity of parents, of schools and teachers, well, I mean, not all teachers, but whatever. And so for me, it's just like you illustrate through your workshop intention what he believed is the essence of. Everybody has this everybody has this art instinct, but it's sort of, slapped because people have to produce. There's no time to daydream. There's no time to mess around. There's no, time to question stuff. And it's just, but it's interesting that he had to leave UK to come to America for people to appreciate him. And that's, for me, is quite telling. Anyway.
No,
thank you.
He's great. Yeah. Actually, I recommend anyone to watch his commencement speech. I think it was at RISD many years ago, and he talks about this. I highly recommend it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Carolina?
Hi, and thank you all for being here. Ms. Lintzeris, thank you for your time, for taking this opportunity of sharing your excellent work with us here in ARTIVISM. And also, I want to shout out to all of you in all the different time zones for being up early or late and all over the world, so thank you for that, because definitely this was an inspiring presentation. I'm coming from the perspective of kind of like summing up what we just discussed in a little while back, not per se as therapeutic, but rather from your experience, right, in doing these sessions. How are people coming to terms with coping, right? Because as you have been mentioning, society is kind of putting us in a position where that's not what you do. Basically, you just gotta be almost like an automata, right? And continue with your normal operations without showing any sign of humanity, basically, right? But through sessions like this, like Arts to the People, you connect again to those inner human and dignified fibers that make us the species of being grateful and community, right? Any thoughts about those ideas of coping? Because I was very taken by what you said in regards of, not even 2 years after, and people seem that we never passed through a pandemic that killed so many people, right? So many deaths, so much suffering, so much all going on throughout the world in different levels. People that lost their livelihood, like you mentioned personally, right? People that the whole family cycle, like that first Thanksgiving, so many here in the US had empty chairs that they sat at the table, right? And now it's like nothing happened.
Yes, how soon we forget. I mean, some of us, we all remember, right? What happened and what continues to happen. Now we're in kind of a weird economic, unstable economic situation. But in terms of coping, I mean, this is why Art to the People was created. I mean, I make art to cope. I've been doing that since I was a kid. I think any artist on this call can attest to that, whether it's making music, whether it's drawing. I did both of those things growing up. I kind of lost sight of that when I started working professionally, because I was in journalism and media. And then I started reconnecting with it as a way of coping with my work malaise and exhaustion. And it turned into rediscovering my childhood love for art, and then leaving that world of media and then coming back to art, which was a very drastic decision in a way, but it felt so right. So I was essentially coping with that long before COVID happened. But for, everyone, art is a coping mechanism. I mean, again, as the Carrie Mae Weems quote says, art has saved my life on a regular basis. I mean, you can listen to an album that brings back memories. That's like, thank God that album was here, and it just got me through this breakup or this person's death or this loss, or I'd lost my job, whatever. I mean, everyone can relate to something like that. Everyone can relate to that. That is a universal human experience that art has been able to help them cope through something. And Art to the People is just a microcosm experience of that.
Yes, definitely. But the matter here is that how can you help in a sort of way for people to recognize, right, that you have to kind of address those matters, right, and bring it forth in let's say in an art making class at Art for the People or other means, right? Because sometimes, yeah, like, oh, you put it in the back burner kind of deal, right? And you don't address it. And any thoughts about that component of the equation in the sense of the individual stepping up and saying, I need to go to one of these sessions?
Well, I mean, again, because in the essence of COVID, it affected everyone greatly. Some people wanted to sweep it under the rug and carry on with their lives. I know plenty of those people, and they're just like, COVID, what? Goodbye, back to 9 to 5, back to the life I knew and had, because that makes me feel safe and comfortable. Which understandable, I get it. But for some other people like myself, it was kind of like, no, we need to change, because COVID just opened up the can of worms. It shone the microscope, the magnifying glass on what's really going on, which is very healthy. And it's been leading up to an unhealthy society for a very long time. And again, if one person, let's say, wants to come into the workshop and, actively wants to discuss COVID, or, put COVID creatively onto the page through art making, that's totally fine. That was never really, I would say, a theme in the workshop, so to speak. Of course, it came up because it was 2021, it was 2022, and it was still a topic of discussion. And maybe it came out in the artwork sometimes, but I would say that, none of the themes were like dedicated to COVID. So if people, again, wanted to sweep stuff under the rug, that was up to them. If they wanted to actively talk about it and they're like, yes, I drew out this wave signifying how my life is ebbing and flowing because I'm dealing with long COVID. That was somebody who came to one of the workshops. Unfortunately, they were contending with that. That makes sense. That's what's coming out of them. That's what they want to discuss. So, in matters of coping and matters, of, let's say, a participant wants to talk about it or not. Again, it relates to constantly adjusting within this framework, within this program. But I think for society to function, I feel like there needs to be a little more adjustment, a little less rigidity in terms, that's a whole other conversation, but just in terms of, creating space for people who might not operate in the status quo. And again, stop being so focused on outcomes, focus on process, focus on, is this working for me now versus I have to make this work or else.
Yes, definitely. Thanks.
You're welcome. I hope that answered your question. Sometimes I can do the
No,
Greek thing and
yes.
just hands are flying and I'm talking about something else.
No, but definitely, yes. And I like that when you have repeated throughout the talk that our society concentrates in the algorithms, in the end product, right? In all these kind of measurable outcomes. What about the process? And in that process, the human being, that we're not just a workforce per se, right? Or a society that just does. We feel also.
Yeah, we're not machines. We were never designed to be machines. We're not supposed to be machines. The machines work for us. We don't work for them. But because machines are becoming, ever so sentient, slowly but surely. I mean, this is why I say, in the face of AI employment, that quote from the blog I wrote for Americans for the Arts, that's the other thing I emphasize is the jobs that are really going to be sustainable are jobs involving creativity, empathy, with emphasis on community. Those three things are those are going to be the jobs that really are going to be sustainable, because that's what's going to keep cultivating the human condition. We don't want to just survive. Again, we want to thrive, hopefully, as a collective. And that doesn't happen until we coalesce and say, here's what we need to do to build together, whether it's a mural, whether it's a community garden, whether it's a drum circle space in a park. We also need more parks. Again, another story. But again, we need spaces, and we also, tapping into the Greek thing, we need public spaces. We need public spaces for people to be able to express themselves creatively. And that is something I've realized that has really gone away. And I kind of wish that would make a comeback. I mean, many cities have them per se, but if they were more effectively utilized, or if there was a way to keep them up a little bit, that would be fantastic. If there's if wealthy cities, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago even, have the capacity for that, but cities that are dealing with different income disparities, I would say, or don't have the wealth compared to those cities, like Baltimore, for example, former industrial powerhouse, recovering from the blight of the steel industry, going overseas, like Pittsburgh, like Detroit. I would say the great thing about being here in terms of the spirit of community and being accepted into the art community is that there's a wonderful DIY aesthetic here, where a lot of people just are doing a lot of alternative stuff, and ego is kind of on the wayside for the most part. But again, it's very different from the New York, LA, Chicago, Miami scenes. It's kind of well, we just got to do it ourselves. Let's see what happens. There's a lot of small to medium-sized gallery spaces here. A lot of cool art events, a lot of sort of underground stuff happening too. And again, that's just selfishly speaking, that's what I want to see, because that's what's going to bring people out. People need to get together. People need to commune. People need to share how they're feeling. Zoom is one thing, and this is great. It helps us hang out together from across the world, but we really need to be in person too. And the arts take us there. That's how we bond, is through the art.
We have a question from Brenda, and then very quickly, Froso, because we have to be a little bit mindful of time. So
Yes,
Brenda?
Sorry about that. I didn't realize this would go this long.
That's okay, Froso.
But I'm thrilled.
Brenda,
Hi.
you have a question? Hi.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Brenda.
Okay. Hi, how are you, Zoe? I came in late, sorry. I'm actually here in Los Angeles, and I'm taking care of my niece and nephew because LAUSD, Los Angeles Unified School District, is having a strike today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. So I'm sorry if you hear the kids in the background. I'm sorry. But no, I just wanted to say, it's I feel like our work is very similar in a sense. I actually started Restorative Justice for the Arts because
Somebody,
I think you muted yourself.
sorry. So I started the grassroots community organization to save our murals that were being whitewashed, and most of the murals that were being whitewashed here were grandfathered murals that were of indigenous iconography, deep indigenous iconography, and a lot of that had to do due to gentrification. So, that's something that I've seen be very controversial for my organization. Like, a lot of people want to do arts and healing, but they don't want to do anything that is decolonial based, because decolonial work makes people admit their wrongdoings. You know what I'm saying? And forces people in using colonial and imperialistic art to deny us space, to deny us any type of visual space, because it's basically settler colonialism, erase all things indigenous. So, like, I have a lot of trouble getting work and contracts, and per se, like, if I would have changed my my wording as far as like art and mindfulness, I think I would have a lot more work. You know what I'm saying? But it's a very art restorative justice for the arts is not a nonprofit. A lot of nonprofits here in Los Angeles are doing a lot of work that is against community, all for the money. So that's another problem that we're facing. We're facing the fact that, people who choose to stay grassroots don't have enough work, are kind of like swept under the carpet per se, but it takes a lot of moral courage to stay grassroots and to be decolonial. Because then it's easy to sell out, you know what I'm saying? So our organization don't get a lot of contracts, especially right now. There's a lot of funding for art and healing, but I'm saying, like, do you see, like, what is your experience as far as like in this sector? Like you said, there's a sustainability as far as arts and health. How is your experience as far as culture? Like, how is that? Like, are a lot of people in your circle people who are like subaltern people who are dealing with ghosting, with erasure, with stuff like, because on top of COVID, right, brown and Black kids like are really, really facing hardships, because not only are we cut off from the financial and the healing circles that are very I guess colonial or white per se, and we are suffering the most. COVID has affected not just women, but brown and Black, people of color, very hard, especially here in Los Angeles, demographically speaking, because I'm here in Los Angeles. So how are you dealing with, is there any, are you seeing these kids show up into your circles, or these people, or what do you see, or how do you feel that in the direction that's heading?
I think that's a really great question. And I want to recognize that I'm coming at this as somebody of European descent, as a white woman, also living in a majority city, which is Baltimore, and has been for quite some time, since the 60s, 70s, pretty much. So in terms of art to the people, it's not kids focused. And then I can go back to the kids in a moment. It's usually just for adults of all stripes. There's a certain price point. It's like $20 to $25, depending on where it's being hosted. Again, with the first art to the people, I was trying to, emphasizing, hoping to make it as affordable, accessible, and equitable as possible for like a 1 hour time frame, so that people can get the most out of the space, have it be kind of in the center of town. Creative Alliance is a little more on the east side, but the Alchemy of Art, which was the first location I had, it was pretty much downtown in the center. So people could try to, come in across the main roads, buses, walk from the metro, what have you, drive, bike, as I used to do. And just get that access point from there. Because again, access is really the first step, right, as you were mentioning. And then I would say from a cross-cultural component, a lot of the people coming to these workshops, it was kind of like 50-50, I would say. Like one of my regulars, Devin, was an African-American male. He was 27, works in tech. You know, again, he came through the post I put on Reddit, not even Eventbrite. Reddit is like a big, you know, if you use Reddit, great, just a fantastic way to promote events, like especially if you're part of a thread that is the city. So I'm part of the Baltimore community on Reddit, and I would just post the events on there and see who would show up. Again, as a way to kind of like make a more egalitarian model, or just trying to reach out as much as possible, because through an email list or connections, I was probably going to get people in the same sphere, the same bubble, you know, which is like sort of youngish working professional in the arts. And that's not really who I was going for. You know, I was trying to get, you know, people who were working at hospitals, particularly shift workers who were burnt out from COVID. Baltimore is a very hospital medical centric city. I still call it a town sometimes. It feels that way. It can act small enough. But yeah, trying to get those people together, students who were experiencing burnout, university students as well. And again, seeing who would come from that. Again, I was trying to amass like the most diverse crowd as possible, but really it was at the mercy of the invitation, so to speak. The Eventbrite I was putting out publicly, the Reddit announcement I was putting out publicly. I was also posting stuff on my Instagram for a bit, and you know, maybe somebody would cross post and that would bring in somebody. So yeah, art to the people is for like adults. To address the kids question, I had a couple of contracts with schools here in minority majority neighborhoods, which happen to be very low income on the whole. And going into the school and working in those spaces, again, it goes back to my point with art to the people, know your community. And I had to go in and essentially, I wasn't teaching, I was learning. I had to learn what was going on with the students, what they were feeling due to COVID, everything from the food they were consuming to how stuff was going on at home. Again, how that was impacting their creativity, their focus, their art making, all these things. And again, me being me, coming from my heritage, coming from my background, coming from my, you know, lens, my own story, and trying to hear these kids' stories, their perspectives, and creating projects, again, not related to art to the people, this is different, but kind of same principle, just to meet them where they were at. And hopefully, you know, create a symbiotic relationship of like, not I'm the teacher and I'm right and you're wrong, definitely not, but like, I want to hear what you have to say. What can I teach you and what can you teach me? And that was kind of the conversation to be had, again, in the context of COVID, because this was like the last 2 years since I've been here in the Baltimore schools.
Yeah, and I see we're definitely working in different spaces, but something I thank you for answering that. Also, I don't know if you have this similar experience, but a lot of the kids, because, you know, I work with the kids, but really the kids have to bring their parents and their family, because when we do a mural, it's community mural making. And so we start with the kids, especially the kids with no art experience. And my experience is mostly working with Indigenous children. And also, you know, I do have experience working with the Black communities here, and also, but mainly Indigenous children are very reluctant to do art. They're very, very reluctant. And I literally have to like say, look, pick up the paintbrush, and you know, so and then when they finish the mural, they're very touched. They're like, wow, I go, now you're an artist. Now no one can tell you you're not an artist. And they have a lot of trouble like processing that. You know what I'm saying? Their self-esteem is but did you notice, like me, a lot of the people, not just the you know, because it's mainly a lot of these kids that I was working with were suicidal. Like all of a sudden they were A students, and then I had parents calling me and like, my daughter she's 15 and she wants to be dead. She wants to commit suicide. And so I took a lot of these kids, and mind you, I do everything I do is for free. And a lot of the times it comes from my pocket, because again, there's if not part of the art mafia in Los Angeles, you don't get any of the funding. You know what I'm saying? And I speak against them. I speak out against them. So they're like, I'm seen as the enemy. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's the one that speaks truth to power. So we kind of just want to shut her out. We don't we don't want to help her. But I lead by example. I teach my kids, we don't need politicians, crooked politicians. We don't need the Department of Cultural Affairs that says that they take care of our art. So I try to teach them that we do these projects on our own. And I've been successful at that. And I'm pretty proud of that. And so when I went and I started to take these kids and under my wing, priority, the ones that just wanted to die, because I'm sure you experienced a lot of that suicidal ideation during and after COVID. You know, maybe, I'm not sure, maybe, but a lot of these kids I took on, and I saw the transformation. It was beautiful, from them wanting to die and then coming outdoors with me and doing a really beautiful mural, and them completely changing their outlook in life and being proud, and not just being proud of what they created, this beautiful mural, but the camaraderie they developed with the other kids. You know what I'm saying? That were, but then what's so funny is the parents themselves, when they were painting the mural, you can see them go in the zone. Like all of a sudden it's a meditative zone. And it was very helpful, not just for the children, but for the parents and the community as well. But did you see this increase in suicidality while you were working with the community?
So with the children, I was a contractor at these schools. So, I mean, I was not privy to that information, so to speak. I mean, there was a lot of absence in the schools I was teaching. Like sometimes kids would be gone for a week. Sometimes they were just so distracted and were morose that they couldn't focus on the project on hand. But in regards to suicidal ideation, I mean, I also recognize that in the Indigenous communities, that's where it's highest, unfortunately, you know, among many other issues that minority groups are contending with, you know, but particularly in Indigenous spaces and communities. But so in the schools I worked with, I can truly say no, but there was a slew of mental health issues going on, catty corner to that: depression, anxiety, you know, self-esteem plummeting, which, you know, tends to happen in high school years, middle school years anyways, unfortunately, again. But COVID really just, you know, amplified everything to the nth degree. And that's why I said with the quote about, you know, social interaction through the arts, you know, can reduce loneliness. This is crucial. And it's why I really admire your work, in that, you know, we have to really bring back this essence of community, in particular for young people. I do really, this is going to make me sound whatever, but I really do feel for younger generations that are not regularly meeting up and hanging out and going outside and
yes,
together.
yes.
I mean, this is such a crucial aspect of growth and psychological development and physical development and being human. You know, it's the art of living. And I think it's so empowering that, you know, they said they were hesitant to pick up a paintbrush, and then they were able to work on this mural, and they felt proud. They created something. They didn't just create something, they created something together.
Yes,
that's like
exactly.
a really big thing. And I really hope you continue your work, because it's vital. And I'll be honest, I didn't have a funder at all. Again, it was cold calling. It was just throwing myself out there. I mean, I was happy enough to have spaces to house these workshops, like Creative Alliance, the Alchemy of Art, but it wasn't like I had a benefactor or sponsored by you know, Domino Sugar or something in Baltimore that made this happen. So
well, thank you. I really thank you for that. I was very curious about that. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. And thank you for your work.
Brenda will be presenting in September. So Zoe, I think we need you for a part 2. This has been so engaging. I wish we could.
I'm sorry.
I'm just like, you have to stay mindful of time, Carolina.
Yeah.
Do you want to chime in? Oh, I think that's what happened to Carolina, the mindful of time. Okay, let's see, Froso, if you want to be quick, do you want to ask your question? Because we need to sign off.
I just want to thank you all of you that talked. But Zoe, I just want to remind where you started. It's shocking how we all, at work and in life, forget the word COVID. You know, it's forgotten completely. In England, where I normally am based and teach, the shocking thing is that I'll end with a good note, and I'll tell you the negative note first. The negative note is that after COVID, because of sharing space and health issues at the university where I am, the professional people, the services, were asked only to come twice a week. Instead of using that positively, all the care now and tutors is that I come twice a week, I economize space, there is no sense of togetherness. They don't even say hello to each other. It's unbelievable. So they took COVID, they took the, you called it capitalist, I don't know how to call it, there's no adjectives enough to kill that culture, but they take the 2 days a week, I have to come to work, the rest I'm at home, and I do my tick box work from there. So all this trauma, and thankful that we're alive, completely gone. There is not a single, and that's what made me suspicious that I should not be at my work anymore. I will try to gradually, if no one's listening, leave. The positive aspect is, musicians are so self-obsessed. They're all self-obsessed, most of them. So what was so touching, I know they are not painters, but it's arts as well. Italy, that if we all remember 19 winter of 20, it had the massive deaths. I mean, I lost 2 very old professors from there. Amazing death spirit. And in Northern Italy, what touched me most, which all of you must know, was that all these musicians, bad, good, whatever, would go out in the balcony, and in a neighborhood, they would create this collective orchestra that you could be an amazing musician, or you could be a little kid banging cooking pots, the covers. But that made that spirit of, hey, I can step out in my balcony. And then the gratitude that, oh, I'm blessed because I've got a balcony. I can actually share public space. Now, imagine this description and put next to each other, there is someone else that I haven't seen, but she's from Heraklion, the other lady here, Miss Linartaki. And where I live, put one and one together. There is so many leftover derelict spaces. What do they want? To park their bloody car next to their home so they can get out of the car and do their business. Instead of parking about 100 meters on the street where it's supposed to be, that you can do that. So imagine having as an artist the luxury of a long 30 meters table, which is public, doesn't belong to anyone, the municipality looks after it, that you can do so many unplanned events. Of course not. What they do, all my neighbors, blame the Δημοτική Αρχή or the municipality. They blame that and themselves. They want the car parked in these spaces. So think of that. That's my finishing point. Think how much we can do for free and help everybody. And anyway, so I can't stop because I'm really inspired, but I'm
Thank you, Fro. So
falling asleep as well.
that's actually a good point to finish this up with is, if we allow everyone a little bit of space, right? Just a little bit of space where we can all work together. Carolina, do you want to do your takeaway? Thank you so much. We really do need a part 2. Thank you, Anna, for coming in again. And Divini and everyone else here, and MJim. Carolina, it's all yours.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the wonderful conversation that we've been having here. Definitely, we need to have a part 2 for sure. Maybe like a panel and discuss all these different angles that are coming out from various parts of the world. Yes. Here in ARTIVISM, we always have the tradition of closing the weekly presentations with a key takeaway for action. It's your turn today, Ms. Lintzeris. So what will be one key takeaway for action with which you would like to leave the audience today?
This is directed to me.
100%.
Ooh, that's interesting. I was gonna say one word, start, meaning start a project, start a collective, start a community gathering, start a mural, a band, whatever. Start something creative, because it might sound a little tedious at first and equally tenacious. Maybe it's just like going to blow your mind. I can't even do this. Who has time, whatever, to do this? But start something creative and see where it takes you. Again, no outcome. Just see where it takes you. See what the process is like for you individually. And if you can bring other people on board to share in your love of art making or music or poetry or dance or whatever, all the more better, and also create that conversation. So I would say just start.
Very powerful, very powerful. And inspiring us, the session today has been, thank you again for being our artivist and for taking your time and inspiring us all today to start, right? To get going, to move along. Professor Archie, you want to close it up?
Sure. Thank you so much, Zoe. Thank you, Frosso, for the zooming in for the first time. We hope to see you back, and Brenda from LA, and Anna from Greece, and Irini, and others that had to leave because of the time. Thank you to Camille Zamora and to Monica Yunus from Sing for Hope, to Stephanie Lake from Adelphi University, from Jennifer Govan of Gottesman's Libraries Teachers College, Columbia University, our sponsors. We hope to see you back again, maybe for a part 2 next week or the following. Follow us. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Angie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Flavia, bye-bye.
Bye. Hope to see you soon.
Yes, yes. Let's go get lost. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye.